The City of London, where billions of pounds change hands every day. This man was one of its leading players, but he chose to give it all up in favour of one of the poorest regions on earth. We tell Richard Harvey's story, how the boss of a leading British company swapped the boardroom for the basics of the developing world. We're with him exclusively as he sees and learns about the battles against hunger and disease, and he tells us how he thinks business can help. It's Richard Harvey's last week as a chief executive, his last week of early starts and back-to-back meetings.
I'd better be getting off because we need to be at CNBC by 6:30, so I better go and see if Tom's downstairs. I'm sure he will be. Okay.
Last January, he shocked the city by announcing his retirement after 10 years at the top of the insurance giant Norwich Union and then the parent company Aviva.
Like another wet night, Tom. It's not going to do the floods any good.
A bit, yes.
Yeah.
We've been pumping about this morning.
It's going to be expensive.
Now he's making his final media appearance as boss.
Morning.
Hello, Richard Harvey. Good, yeah.
Okay, with gap years and sabbaticals a key talking point today on account of our guest host Richard Harvey taking a year off in Africa, where he'll be working for the charity Concern Universal. He says among his top concerns there is a falling life expectancy, brutally contrasting with the West's ageing population. Richard, nice to see you today. You've got many skills after years of running one of the biggest businesses in Britain. What skills are you going to be taking with you from the city?
Well, that's a pretty alarming question, because when you first think about it, you think, well, I just don't know anything that's any use.
I'm very interested in how Western companies are looking at their development in this continent.
I think delivery is the root of it. How do you make it a sustainable difference?
"36 years in the insurance industry are coming to an end, but the pace isn't slackening. As the boss of a top 100 company, there's plenty of pressure, but lots of perks too. An executive lift to whisk him direct to the office. And high above the capital in these quiet, luxurious corridors, Richard has a dedicated top team to do his bidding. He's about to give it all up.
I think I've enjoyed virtually every bit of it. I regard my life as being a series of chapters of things that you do. I've done the chapter that is Chief Executive of Aviva. It's been fantastic fun, but it has to end somewhere.
From his opulent office with a bird's eye view of the city, he's forced through big changes in his industry, making Aviva one of Europe's biggest insurance companies, employing 60,000 people in 25 countries.
I think that's something I do feel proud of. It's a legacy I can leave, that effectively 3 substantial UK companies came together and formed a truly international competitor. It took leadership actually from me, and actually from the board, from the chairman, and from the whole team. This is a team business. You can't run a business as big as this on your own.
He could have stayed, but he says he wants to take on a new challenge, and this is the time to do it.
I think you can entirely please yourself either at the point when you leave university, you haven't started your career, you've no family responsibilities, or probably at this end of my career, where after 37 years of pensionable employment, I don't have to work for a living anymore. Kay and I, the children have left home, they're independent, so it's our chance to be responsible again.
He's calling it the gap year he never had. With his wife Kay, he'll spend most of the time in Africa. But this won't be a holiday. It's more a mission.
Why is Africa the only continent that has gone backwards in the last 20 years in terms of health and wealth and general quality of life? So our idea is to go and work with the charity, to try and be some practical use on the ground, but perhaps most of all to find out what some of the underlying difficulties are, and hopefully on our return be able to make a bigger difference at a macro level.
There's plenty to do before he leaves. A trip to a private medical clinic, for example, to get protection against tropical diseases. And he's not used to doctors' surgeries.
Well, one of the facilities we enjoy as executives is effectively a contracted out healthcare process. Ironically, general executives have extremely low sickness rates. They are highly motivated. You know, I think I can say in 35 years I've had one day off sick. It's like Hogwarts, isn't it, really? Well, sort of a gin and tonic with a difference, isn't it?
There you go.
Got the tonic, not the gin. Right, drink it.
As Richard prepares to leave the city, the summer's terrible weather is causing big problems for the insurance industry. But he doesn't need to worry about that, as he's on his way to a farewell party. Staff from all levels of the business have turned out to see him off.
For him to do this, it's just very different for a chief executive to do it. So it's very admirable.
It's quite surprising for someone in his position to go off and do what he's doing. You know, it's not the normal chief executive, go to the golf course, you know, buy a boat, cruise the world type, you know, departure.
There's so many people in his position who maybe leave business to go into NGOs, voluntary sector, going straight at the top as the chairman of a charity, as the chief executive of a charity. But what Richard's done is actually, you know, go in at the grassroots to find out what it's really like.
It's the saddest part of going, because after 7 years or 10 years of putting almost your life and soul into the business, this is your extended family. I hope that those I know best will keep in touch, but I know realistically that at least 80% of the people here I probably won't come across again. So it's very sad indeed.
And now back at their country home, Richard and Kay are on their own, having to work out for themselves how to use a mosquito net.
All right, you got it out, you can get it back in.
There's a final visit to church. Their Christian faith played a part in the desire to improve the lot of the poor in Africa.
We've had such a privileged life that it's time to give back. I do have a Christian faith, and I strongly believe that if you have a faith, then you should act on it. It's not just a faith for going into church on Sundays. You should be making a difference.
Soon they'll be swapping the comforts and certainties of this Cotswold village for an unknown and daunting new landscape. So now the great adventure begins. We caught up with the Harveys at a school in Kenya. Richard's already in the thick of it, helping to find water, something the school desperately needs.
Everybody's getting back a bit now. Gareth, I should be careful, mate. Look out! Yeah, we got it! We got a geezer! It is an oil, but it's a hell of a lot more valuable in this part of the world.
The former corporate boss can't contain his enthusiasm. He's as thrilled as the kids to have struck water.
We'll pump it up the hill there to the school buildings you can see in the distance. They can then use that for creating a small farm on the hillside down towards this water point. So they'll be able to supplement their eating of basing maize with the things that they can grow on this hillside.
Okay, number 6. How many people? One.
Up the hill and in the classroom, Kay is teaching at the same school Nado enter it.
I was slightly nervous about the prospect of teaching because I haven't actually been in a school for a number of years, but it is a joy. The children are so enthusiastic, they are very keen to learn. I don't have a language problem because although their native language is Mai, which is the Maasai language, even from preschool age 3 or 4 they are beginning to learn English, and they are so disciplined, well behaved and a delight to teach.
I'm happy because I've got the wife to Richard. We call her Nasieku. She just came and we baptized her so that the children can pronounce her name. So we call her Nasieku. Nasieku means somebody who can walk a bit fast. And out of that, she has come to school. She has been with us. She has been linking with the children. They've made friends.
The school's in Maasai country. This tribe's lived off cattle for generations, but grazing them is getting tougher. The rains are more unpredictable and water is scarcer. Food is desperately short. It's the United Nations which supplies maize, wheat and peas direct to schools. Without this aid, many children would go hungry. Home is a hut like this. The fire is for warmth, but rarely for cooking. So it's often on an empty stomach that the children walk to school, sometimes a 5-mile hike. And they have to bring some water and firewood if they want any lunch. The school stove itself is a big problem. This kind of cooking uses a lot of wood. Sometimes cow dung has to be put on the fire. That makes it even smokier, and it's a health hazard.
No crack, no good, no good, yeah. You've got to go in the fire. Yeah?
So, a few weeks before, Richard has decided to do something. He's been fetching bricks for a new kind of stove that's more efficient. He's hopeful he can build it at the school. Richard Harvey's projects here have been initiated by local requests and needs. For example, somewhere safer and more efficient to cook food for the school and a local supply of water. Richard's come to the continent to learn about its problems through the eyes of ordinary Africans. Some aid projects are working well, like this dam which allows a clean water supply for villagers. But he's already seen too many that aren't.
I think any intervention which is simply about the West coming in and delivering almost an enforced solution without consultation and without buy-in leads to, quite frankly, a waste of money and time. Because if you turn up in a village, drill a borehole, put a well on it, that's fantastic. You go away, it will work for 2 or 3 or 4 months. It will then get polluted. The community will feel that it's bust, and it will just be left. And it's that top-down sort of aid dumping which is a failure. And I think we've all done it. It's actually what I thought aid was about before I came here. Now I think aid is something rather more sophisticated.
He's getting guidance from Jerry McCarthy, an old hand with Concern Universal in Africa, on the importance of community involvement.
If ownership is not there from the very beginning, chances are that everybody will stand back and say, we don't own this project, we don't own this dam, and nobody will take responsibility. And somebody will stand back after 4 or 5 years and say, oh, the water point you gave us is finished. Can you not come back and give it to us again? Yeah. Yeah. That is pathetic, and I'm afraid it's far too common.
The boss who got chauffeured around in London has now got his own hands on the wheel, and he's learning quickly what it's like to drive in this environment.
The roads are effectively non-existent, as you can see. The great irony, here we are coming to school in a Chelsea tractor. I bet very few Chelsea tractors have been put through this in Chelsea. But this is just about at the limit of what this can cope with.
For now, his main focus is the stove project back at Nado Enterit School. It's taking shape, brick by brick. The finished article will need a lot less wood to cook a meal for the children.
Well, what you've got here is we built the first half, which is the firebox underneath. So you've got a very contained firebox, air going in that end, wood going in this side to burn in a very narrow chimney. So you've got a small fire for one thing, not much of it, but all the hot air is trapped in there, and it's coming up this chimney here. But with the climate change and therefore the deforestation, the shortage of fuel, it's much more important to be able to cook over an energy-efficient cooker.
His experience in the corporate world has given him an idea. Why not harness the increasing demand by companies for schemes to offset their carbon emissions? In other words, get them to fund stoves like this and thus help achieve carbon savings. A big company might, for example, be prepared to pay for energy-efficient stoves in 50 schools at about £500 each.
Just being able to join those two ends up, one right away at the other end of the desire for firms in the UK to be carbon neutral, right down at the other end of seeing the community putting sticks and dung in a fire under a pot to feed school children, and the two can be brought together. And I guess you could say, if you want to be over dramatic, it wouldn't have happened if we hadn't come from the middle of London to a Maasai school.
He's already brought in an expert who verifies projects like this for corporate sponsors. He thinks there are exciting possibilities for Kenyan communities.
The idea of improved cookstoves is not new in Africa, but expanding it in Africa has been a problem. And what the carbon financing is going to do to this project is create the possibility of that expansion by overcoming the financial barrier that we have been facing in Africa. So our overall wood fuel consumption will decrease by at least 50%.
So it's been a big day for the school, the Harveys and the charities supporting the projects. A new borehole and a new stove. That's quite something for the teachers and pupils here.
I will not want to bore you so much. We've talked with you for a length of days and months and hours, and I'm happy.
You can change this school and this community into one of the most successful and prosperous in the region.
But for all the applause and confidence that one day they'll be growing their own crops, there is danger ahead for schools still entirely dependent on outside food aid. All the food for the school comes through the UN's World Food Programme, much of it like this from the USA. But there are fears of future cutbacks to that programme, caused by soaring demand elsewhere in the world and supply shortages. And Richard Harvey has been turning his mind to the problem. He's been persuaded by an idea that's gaining ground amongst development experts. Stop the food handouts and give cash to schools instead. That would put spending power into communities and might stimulate local food production. Above all, it would end the dependency culture.
I'm very worried about what's going to happen to the World Food Programme when the world's grain surplus runs out, because so much of that food is provided in kind by the major donor, the USA, and indeed by other European players. So we need to look at what the alternatives would be, and I think we need to migrate from crudely dumping grain on a community into giving aid in the form of practical money so that the local industry can be encouraged to produce that food.
Food is one problem, but so too is health, as the Harveys are finding out.
We're coming into a health camp, which is a completely open opportunity for absolutely anybody in the community to come and have a health problem looked at. And of course that health problem might be HIV, it might be malaria, it might just be an infected cut.
About 1,000 people have turned out at this mobile health clinic. Hospitals are simply too far away. Malaria and HIV/AIDS are major killers in Kenya, and the clinic offers a rare chance to get tested and treated.
Come on, you're going to be a great little teenager, aren't you? You're going to grow up and be a big stud. Come on, come on. Come on.
Bosses are used to getting their own way, but Kenyan goats don't show much respect, even for chief executives. The Harveys are shifting the animals to a family in need.
Bye, Simba. How are you?
This woman has AIDS. She can get the drugs she needs, but food to sustain her is another matter. The goats will provide a supply of milk and breed.
This is not an eating goat. It's for the milk, which will be good for you, make you stronger.
She says it will be of great help because now the money she's been using to buy milk, she will now cut and use that money for something else.
It's a personal gift from the Harveys because they were so moved by her plight.
The thing that really hit me was visiting the lady who had been really seriously ill with AIDS, and being there and seeing seeing exactly what it was like to have nothing, to be so poor that you've got no food at all. You're living in incredibly basic conditions. You've got 5 children at home to feed. And I was fine while I was talking to her. And then we got into the car and drove away, and I just wept because it really hit me, the reality of serious illness, poverty, not water nearby, no means to grow the things you need, and to be really ill and not have the wherewithal. It was heartbreaking.
Back on the road to Nairobi, and it's time to focus on the key objectives. Richard is trying to firm up his stove scheme, and he wants to link it to the cash for food idea. So, next stop, a meeting with the man who runs Britain's aid budget in Kenya, Simon Bland of the Department for International Development, DFID.
It's basically a brick-built stove, so it's about a cubic metre. We've done the first half, so the cube is like this. Yep. The bottom half has got the firebox in it, so you've got a bottom half here with fuel coming in here.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I guess for me, what I'd be very keen on doing, because we talked about trying to integrate this, stoves with school accounts and cash to buy more food.
A plan to target 50 schools is taking shape. British government cash instead of grain would go direct to these schools, and UK companies would be approached for funding for the cookers.
The use of money rather than food, and put that purchasing power in the hands of the locals, the institutions, the schools, and that, to stimulate markets.
So a sense of satisfaction with the prospect that ideas could become reality.
Only children. Go away. Go away.
There are frustrations too. Here, Richard's patience is tested as he hands out T-shirts and caps with an anti-AIDS message. But the man who once ran one of Britain's biggest companies is overwhelmingly positive about his experiences, and he believes that the key to Africa's future well-being is trade rather than aid.
Africa has to trade its way out of difficulty in the end. It's got a long way to go. The first thing I do would be to say, look, if you're making donations, make absolutely certain that you understand how they're going to be applied, and this is not just aid dumping. Africa has a fantastic future if we get that right. People here are genuinely clever. Education is pushing its way through a whole generation, and there will be a serious competitor for Asia in the long run, and business needs to think about getting on and investing here, because it won't be that long before there's an African tiger to chase the Asian tiger.
There is a growing sense amongst development organisations that senior business people can make a significant contribution to aid projects on the ground. That you don't, for example, have to be a student to take a year off. You could be halfway through a career, or after retirement, wanting to do something more. Concern Universal certainly goes along with that. The charity feels it's benefited from Richard's wealth of experience.
Okay, guys, I'll do this one.
What can business leaders like him bring to the table?
Pragmatism, a can-do approach. Don't wait around for everything, all the ducks to be lined up. Get on with it. I think a lot of the NGO experience we have in our own bureaucracy, we get in the way of it. I think keeping it simple, keeping it service-oriented, keeping it people-focused, and using professional standards to do that is the right way forward. I think business understands that.
Do you think some people might have thought, what's going on here? What's this well-known business leader actually doing? Is it a bit of a PR stunt? Is it a bit cynical?
Well, of course people are going to think that. Whatever you do, whether it's in business or in your personal life, there'll be a range of opinion between stark raving mad to doing something perfectly sensible. And I guess all those who heard about what we're doing will be arranged across that range. All I'd say from our point of view is that everything we've done has confirmed our view that this was a worthwhile thing to do.
Good. Right, let's get loaded.
The Kenyan leg of the tour is over. Next stop, Malawi in the new year. The Harveys plan once again to listen and learn, and also to formulate an action plan to pass on to policymakers.
what we've learned we would love to put to use in terms of encouraging the link between business and government and major donors, particularly to Africa, to work in a better way.
Some might see this as naive, do-gooders who are jumping to quick conclusions with only limited experience. But the one-time boardroom power player feels he can make a contribution to the debate about the future of this troubled continent.